Greetings, hunters. My name is David Tveraas. I'm the lead game designer at OccupationalHazard LLC, and I'd like to review someone else's game. This game is put together by Renegade Game Studios. The game is Hunter the Reckoning 5th Edition. First, I'd like to go over the basis of what Hunter the Reckoning is, where prior games have gone with the same game line in the World of Darkness. This is a World of Darkness game line. And then review some of the specifics of how the game plays, and then I will end with some of my opinions about the game, and probably some of the things that I'll be house ruling. The first thing you'll see here is that the core rulebook has this fantastic game art by Mark Kelly. And of course, everyone who put the hard work into making this game deserves credit as well, and I like that the credits page is right there and easy to see. You can see who did what. If you want to know who did the graphic design and layout, if you want to know who did the proofreading, it's all right there. So Hunter the Reckoning has a legacy. This is the second, I believe, version of Hunter the Reckoning. The first Hunter the Reckoning was vastly different. I'll get to more detail with that later. I'd also draw parallels between this and Hunter the Vigil, which is actually a Chronicles of Darkness game, but as you know, you may know, you might not know this, but Chronicles of Darkness used to be the new World of Darkness in quotes, but since they brought back the, quote, classic or old World of Darkness to be the main World of Darkness, it is now Chronicles of Darkness was the new old one. I know, really confusing, and the World of Darkness is the original World of Darkness, once again. So this is a fantastic book full of a lot of great art, a lot of flavor text and that kind of thing. Something I would actually like to mention is that the flavor text ends, or rather, there's non-flavor text where you're actually talking about the game by page 6. Something that the Vampire V5 book I thought I was a little critical of is that it wasn't until page 33 that you ended flavor text. Now I love flavor text, but it doesn't help me play the game. So I do like that you can get more straight to, the flavor text, you get in the mood, you get the feeling. 33 pages is too much. 6, yeah, I can start learning about the game now at this point. As you can see, there's a consistent style here. Stark white pages, like grayscale drawings a lot of the time. The signature color of the Hunter orange is here, which is I like the orange is used for Hunter. It's reminiscent of like hunters in the forest where they wear their reflective gear that's orange. I mentioned that the cover art changed. These were the crew. This is part of the this is not exact art here, but these 3 people were in the original cover art, and there was a little bit of a uproar online. They thought that the art, which I think it's actually all the way in the end somewhere. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, this one. I believe this used to be the cover. Now, nothing against these 3 individuals. It just looks like they're sightseeing or something like that. I don't get that they're hunters just from looking at them. They could just be like longshoremen, which is a fantastic art, though. I'm glad they kept it in the book, put it in the back instead of the front. And looking back at the front, like she's got a gun, she's got the halo, she's looking down like determination. Like I'm just feeling this a lot more for this particular game. How do you play Hunter? You play it a lot like other storytelling games. In fact, I believe if I jump to certain pages here, this is how you use the dice. In Vampire, there's a very similar dice system. And this is something that I like about this book a lot. It uses both the Hunter dice for the Desperation dice and the Hunter dice for regular dice. It's literally just this one sidebar. Right here. Just this one sidebar, it tells you both. In the Vampire book, something I was critical about that book, there's a lot of things I'm critical about the Vampire book, despite how much I love Vampire 5th edition. Just the layout and just how the rules present themselves. You have to jump throughout chapters, and this is actually a prime example of that. These rules in the vampire book are in different chapters. They're not just in different paragraphs or different sections of the chapter, they're entirely different chapters. Um, so in Vampire, you'll have your normal dice and your hunger dice. It's very similar here in Hunter 5th edition, where you have regular dice and desperation dice. Now, other than the fact that ones are, I think in Vampire they're called bestial failures. Here it can be overreach or despair if you roll the one. I can't wait to get my hands on these dice too. I believe they're black and orange, just like these colors here that you see. Um, so you probably could use vampire dice for these dice if you don't have them, or just normal d10s like it shows here, where 1 through 10 just determine which one of these effects transpire. But also, like if you use the vampire dice, you could choose bestial failure to mean the exclamation point, and the fire you can just either crit from regular dice or um, the hunger dice. So I'll probably be using those until I get my hands on hunter dice. So that's pretty simple. Despair and overreach, I'll explain that in a second. It says see page 182. If you already know the vampire system, or it's the only storytelling system right now in the 5th edition, but I'm imagining a lot of them are going to follow very similar models, as this one also follows a very similar model. So this page 116 shows you the dice rolls, and if you jump all the way to page 125, you will see what desperation is. Desperation is basically a shared power stat. In Vampire, for example, you have your blood potency, or that sort of thing, generation. The interesting, unique thing about desperation, which I really, really like, is that your entire cell, that's your group of hunters, all share a desperation pool, and it goes up and down. It's kind of like a catch-up mechanic, where if terrible things happen to your cell, your desperation goes up, which makes sense. You become more desperate. However, if you're more successful in the hunt, your desperation goes down. That's something that I think might feel a little weird in play. I haven't played yet, but if you get rewarded, sure, you get like XP, that kind of thing, but then you just see the storyteller pull another desperation die away from you. Yes, that makes sense because you're less desperate, but as players, I can see that not feeling good. It'll feel great when your desperation goes up, especially because it's going to make up for something that happened bad to you. Like here it says, like if a hunter suffers serious injury, or the quarry manages to escape, oh man, that's terrible. We're trying to hunt here and things are not going our way. So it's sort of a catch-up mechanic. The storyteller will put more dice in the center, and that could be used for your desperation pools, which I'll explain in a second. What that is desperation pool. But then they take it away when you actually succeed. So I kind of like it. I like the feel. But as long as players roll with it and don't feel too bad every time they succeed and lose more power, it's kind of neat. It's very similar to the first edition Hunter the Reckoning's. You could risk your conviction, which was like a total gamble. This is somewhat of a gamble, and yeah. The other track is your danger track, which is also something that it could be secret or put in the center. It's also running from 1 to 5. Desperation can actually affect this because so your danger is how much danger your cell is in. Does your quarry, that's the monsters you're hunting, know that you're hunting it? Is it hunting you? That's danger 5, when it's decided that you needs to actively hunt you to because you're that much of a threat. And certain things mechanically in the game go off of danger, like how many bodyguards the monster or quarry might have, or how hard it is to find it, that kind of thing, because it knows you're coming for it. As I was saying, the desperation dice, the desperation pool. So those ones, those exclamation marks, That's bad. You don't want to get those exclamation marks. You can only use your desperation dice at a certain point, and that's where creeds come in. Bear with me. This is all coming together. I know I was just talking about desperation dice and I jumped over to creeds. Now your creed, it 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 used to be more akin to like your clan, your for vampire, your tribe for werewolf. I would say that it is less impactful than it has been in the past, especially with the old Hunter, the Reckoning creeds, where you got a whole bunch of like imbued powers. Imbued powers, by the way, gone. There's no imbued powers whatsoever. There's still edges. There's still edges. They just aren't imbued. They are. You've been nerfed severely. These hunters are not imbued hunters. There's no mention of imbued hunters in here, really. Or there might be some side mention somewhere that I missed, but I think I saw one mention of imbued hunters in the Second Inquisition book, but I'm not sure. They might have just used the word imbued to mean something else. So there's a whole section of creeds in this book, but this little sidebar pretty much summarizes everything you need to know about the creed. So there are edges that are recommended for them. There's drives that are recommended for them, but they're just recommended. You can have any drive or any edge. There's no like in creed experience point cost or anything. The only thing that your creed defines is this: your creed field. I'm not even sure why you need a creed if the only defining feature is your creed field. You just choose a creed field. So what a creed field is when you can use your desperation dice. See, I told you I'd get back to desperation dice. So it's very situational. Entrepreneurials here, they can use their desperation dice when building, inventing, augmenting. So the entrepreneurial creed are the ones who they're the inventors. They're the innovators. They make objects to hunt monsters. So I probably wouldn't have used the word entrepreneurial if I was writing this game. However, I didn't write this game. I would have just called them inventors or something like that. I don't know. I think entrepreneurial is just way too of a business term. But the other terms that they use here, faithful, inquisitive, martial, and underground, I think perfectly encapsulate what the creeds do. Faithful, that's direct conflict with supernatural. So they're going for the supernatural directly. Martial, that's physical conflict. Which doesn't have to be with the supernatural, the quarry, but it can be anything that's physical. Inquisitives, research, breaking, entering, interrogation, anything gaining information for the hunt. Underground, stealth and subterfuge, in service of the hunt. So, those can be broadly interpreted, but that's the only thing that your creed does, is they have a creed field. Now, back to those desperation die fields. Now that you have a creed and you have a creed field, if you meet that criteria, you can use that desperation dice of pool for an action doing one of those things. So let's say the desperation pool is currently 3. I'm a martial hunter. I'm trying to gain some information. My creed field doesn't apply, so I don't have the option to use those. My inquisitive friend can, but now that the monster is here in front of us and we fight it, the opposite. Fighting it isn't gaining information, so they can't use those actions for the desperation die pool. I, as the marshal, can, because it's physical conflict. So I run up, stab with the sword, and I want to use the desperation dice. So I've grabbed those 3 extra and add them to my pool. However, if I get any exclamation points, here's the risk. If I get even 1 exclamation point, it doesn't matter if I have 8 successes. Once I get 1 exclamation point, I have to choose. There's this terrible choice you have to make. Either you're overreaching, which you get all the successes that you made. However, each one that you rolled, all those exclamation points, add to your danger. So it makes all monsters tougher. It makes it can mean that you're being hunted by everything in the area. Stuff like that. So that's a pretty pretty tough ask. Um, but the other choice you can make is despair. You can just fall into despair. Obviously, if you make no successes, you just automatically fall into despair because you can't choose to succeed if you have made no successes. Um, so, what is despair? Despair means that you can no longer use desperation dice, even if your creed makes it um, meets the requirements. Um, how do you get rid of despair? You succeed in your drive. So I was saying that the creeds aren't quite analogous with clans and tribes because it's only the creed field. Well, this is the other side of it. And any hunter can have any drive. So it's just a reason that you got into monster hunting. Curiosity, vengeance. You made an oath. You need to atone for something. Envy. You're greedy. You want what they've got. You're prideful. You think you're better than them. Like I'm a human. I'm better than a monster, of course. All of these things led you to the hunt, and they all have a redemption. And here's the other interesting thing: is just like desperation die pools and danger, they all apply to the cell. You can be redeemed by any hunter in your cell, so you don't have to do it yourself. You don't have to, like in Vampire. There's this individual search for humanity where you have to, like cultivate your touchstones and make sure you don't do a bunch of sins, that kind of thing. But here, it doesn't. It's your cellmates that can do it. You could do it yourself too, of course. But as long as they succeed in your goal, you can come out of despair. And it's a binary. There's no humanity track or anything like that, or morality or anything like that. There are touchstones, but as far as I can tell, there's no mechanic other than if your last touchstone dies, you're automatically in despair. It says that, but I don't think they actually do anything for you other than narrative gain, which I love touchstones for narrative. From because Vampire also has the idea of touchstones. Touchstones being people that who you relate to, who are part of your normal life. So in this example, they wouldn't just be other hunters. It would be someone who's just trying to live their life. The reason you're doing what you're doing, who you're protecting. Think of it like people always talk about, like how soldiers or police or whatever, no matter how you feel about whatever they're doing at a particular time, how they allegedly are doing it for everyone else, doing it for civilians. But these are specific people that they know. Like I'm guarding the streets to protect my family, who I don't want them to be having to guard the streets. I just want them to live their normal lives and enjoy themselves. So this particular family member who I am protecting can be a touchstone. This person who I've admired from afar, who I just want them to continue whatever they're doing. This, like, I don't know, music artist or anything that's just making humanity continue to be normal. You can use that as a reason to not be in despair. There is still hope. Yeah, so I pretty much explained like 90% of the rules right there. This is a super streamlined game. That's just about it. Except one thing, edges. One thing for play. There's plenty more to do with lore that I can talk about. But edges, I am actually quite disappointed with edges. So in the very first Hunter, there was imbued edges, which were like crazy powers that they had. In this edition, though, edges, that's just the rules. Edges are much more like skills and backgrounds, which you already have. To make a hunter, there's skills and there's backgrounds. So your edges include three types. There's assets, which are like things that you have and have access to. You can requisition them. That's arsenal, which is just weapons that aren't bombs. It's interesting that they specifically said that because there's another one, just ordnance, which is bombs. There's fleet, which is vehicles. And there is library, which is information, books, that sort of thing. Those are the assets that you can have access to. When you create a hunter, you get a choice. You can have 2 edges and 1 perk. A perk is sort of like a way to enhance an edge. or you can have um, so it's two edges, one perk, or one edge and two perks. Experience wise, it it's a lot better to get two edges and one perk. Um, However, it's if it's a one shot, you might want to choose the one edge and two perks because you can actually get a really strong perk that edge that way, since you're enhancing it. If that's specifically the edge that you want. If you're doing a long-term campaign, I'd say probably just get the two edges. It's 7 experience points each, versus a perk is 3. So you're either getting. I thought it was really weird that they designed it that way because you're either getting, was it 13 versus 17 experience points worth of stuff. So there's a 5 differential there, which is pretty big for a starting character. Um, yeah. So here's the thing: is all those things I just mentioned, getting guns, getting vehicles. I mean, that's something I just normally give to my players anyway. If a vampire wanted a gun or a vehicle, I'd be like, all right, do you have resources? Can you make the very same rolls that it says to do in these? Like here, it says for to get a gun, you can do manipulation plus streetwise. It's like I would just let any character who wasn't a hunter roll manipulation plus streetwise to see if they can get some certain weapon off the street. If they knew the underground that well, or if they maintaining their own arsenal and they just have like the resources to buy it, like that's not a power. You can just get a vehicle. You can just literally go research stuff. Why do you need to have a library? That's just. I mean, these were backgrounds in prior editions. Arsenal and library were literal backgrounds. Um, Global access hacking. That's kind of cool. Improvised gear, just making new things for the hunt. I mean, why would I not let you roll crafts to try to make a thing you've imagined? Like that's why do you need a perk to modify it when you could just make the roll? That's already kind of built into this game. Global access is hacking. This one I thought was particularly weird. Drone jockey. Not only is it weird because it gives you a choice of to do what they say is a flying drone or a rugged walker drone. Now, colloquially, drone specifically means something that's like flying or floating. I know there's UAVs are normally drones, but there's also unmanned aquatic vehicles can also be called drones. But I've never heard of a walker being called a drone. Normally, like Boston Dynamics robots is probably what they're thinking of. It gets brawl and athletics. Like, to me, this seems a little bit too Shadowrun to have just a robot fighting. Because, I mean, it's brawl and athletics, like jumping around and fighting. Like, maybe if you combined it with ordnance or something where it could place bombs for you or something. But this is like a specific type of hunter. Like, I can't imagine there being a lot of hunters running around with robots in the World of Darkness. That just seems really off for the hunter theme that I'm imagining, or even the flying drones. Just them all like there's not many edges here, so like a decent percentage of hunters would likely like randomized would likely have a drone jockey and just like have a drone that. I mean, I would just let any character use a drone. Why do I need an edge for this to be a superpower? Beast Whisperer, I think is parallels that drone jockey a little bit, except it's an animal. But like, there's animal kin in the game. Like, I would let you roll charisma and animal kin or composure and animal kin to command and train animals. Like, I think that's fair. Like, why do I need this edge? Endowments are the only edges that. Okay, so endowments are a lot like True Faith in Vampire. And Truth Faith in Vampire says specifically you can't buy with experience points. Endowments you can buy with experience points, and it's divided up a bit, so it's not just a single tree like True Faith is. And also, everything in here they say that you can skin differently. Like your endowments, your sense the unnatural perks can be True Faith based, or they could be some sort of weird science you're doing, like experiments. So you're sensing them with a device, like the Ghostbusters would sense with that device that they had. um, Here's the thing, though, is that already exists in other forms. Because its endowments represents True Faith as well. See, it says that right there. Um, and this is where I come to the vampire book, Sanguine Inquisition. Second Inquisition, I haven't mentioned this yet, has a bunch of hunter-like elements that they call orgs. Orgs are actually pretty big in this game as well. They're the organized parallel to hunters. I don't even know what to call these hunters. They're not imbued hunters anymore. They're, what do they call them? They're just capital H hunters. So you're a hunter or an orc hunter, I guess. I don't think I came across a term though than like it used to be imbued hunter versus normal hunter, but this is just normal hunter. Um, so the Second Inquisition book, I'll get back to that, has a lot of cool powers. They have psychic powers. They have wizards powers, like you spells that you can cast spells. Um, they have these types of powers that they're talking about because they have true faith, but they also have augmented other abilities that are attached to it. Um, like there's like the holy ground merit. There are different. Oh, here at the very end here. Okay, let me quickly go through these. So sense the unnatural, that lets you detect the supernatural. Repel, that means to push them away, but you can even use it to like. Um, so all these things require you to have like a device in your hand. It calls it the object of focus, and that could be like a crucifix or whatever have you, or some sort of scientific device. So repel the unnatural lets you actually damage them if you press it against them. There's no damaging other than that, though. There's also thwart the unnatural, which is to ward or protect your mind against like their powers or other, not necessarily just your mind, but protect you against their powers. And then there's artifact. Artifact, it says you get a device and it gets one extra die. A lot of this game just gives you extra dice. I don't feel that's very compelling. Extra dice. I like effects. I like the warding. I like the repelling. That's kind of cool. Um, uh, of course, there's cool perks for it. I like the perks for artifacts, but there are what do they call them in Second Inquisition? They call them relics. Relics that are really cool in Second Inquisition. I think Second Inquisition is a better resource for what I think Hunter should be than this book when it comes to powers. There's just so many more powers in it, and that brings me to prior games. The original Hunter, The Reckoning, they got a lot of powers. So much where I think that was too many powers. They just have all these powers for no reason. That they had, the lore in that game was that messengers gave them this, like, I guess they're sort of pseudo angels, and they just had powers to fight the supernatural. Um, that's all gone. There's no mention of that in this book. Hunter the Vigil, I think, did a great job of having different types of hunters, quite a vast array. I'd recommend looking to that book if you want to create your own edges, because there's a lot of great conspiracies and compacts, is what they call them in those games, um, that have their own endowments. Endowments being their edges in that game. That would, I think, if you want to house rule it, would be a lot cooler than what they got in here, because really there's nothing. This is a big nothing burger. Edges are barely anything. I would just let you roll these dice anyway, or just have, if you want a relic, just take a background that says you get a relic, um, an artifact. These just feel like supplement, like, I don't know, not a single. That's it. That's the end of this list. I like the endowments that better than the other ones because it's like something that's World of Darknessy, other than just having a gun or a drone for some reason. Um, but yeah, I don't feel like these powers are powers. They're just a slight variation on the current skills you already can have. I would just let you roll. I've always let anyway, vampire or mage or any other characters just roll for these things. Um, so that's the part I like the least about this. Let's talk about monsters. Yeah. I've talked a lot about the hunters, but what are they hunting? They are hunting. Uh, so there's a couple different antagonists here. Um, I obviously they're hunting monsters, like this werewolf here, but they're also up against the orgs that I mentioned. They're hunting vampires, supernatural threats. So there's several supernatural threats that we know in the world of darkness. We've got, so here in the supernatural threat section, I like the way that this is formatted. It's sort of like a little monster manual if you know D&D at all. Um, it has monster abilities. So at the beginning, it shows you which monsters' abilities they have. Sometimes there's a number next to the ability determining what happens in that circumstance. For example, if there's a number next to regenerate, that's how many health levels they regenerate per turn. Um, Sometimes it's like how much damage they take, if it gets pressed against them, that kind of thing. Um, and then once you have all these like general abilities that you can apply modularly to monsters, once you go into a certain monster type, like here's vampire, here's specifically what they have. So vulnerability sunlight 2, that means that they're vulnerable to sunlight, and if their sunlight's just press against them, meaning that they're in the sunlight, they take 2 damage. Um, and vulnerability fire, notice there's no number there. That just means they take aggravated damage from it if someone hits them with fire for an attack. So it's how much their attack did versus just 2 if they're just exposed to it. Now, if there was some sort of sunlight attack, it wouldn't do the 2. It would do whatever that roll is, but there's not very many sunlight attacks. Maybe a mage could do it, but I don't think they have anything like that yet. Weak spot. So yeah, when there's not an explicit thing in the prior index there, like bite, it specifically outlines what the power they have. And then it gives it a sample. There's samples of all the types of monsters that they have listed here. So it does a lot of flavor text, and then it gives the stats, and then it gives any other notes and traits. So if they have a different ability, like this says he can become a rolling cloud of red mist, they could have easily just put that in the index, but they put it here because he's the only one in this that has that this list. So there's a lot of really cool monsters. I like that they're here. This is the one that was in one of the previews. Celestina, the Bloody Mannequin. I like that one a lot. It's horrifying. So these are the quarry. They're very diverse. They've got many different types of quarry. There's the vampires. There's werewolves. There's sorcerers and their creations, which they definitely did some awakened sorcerers here. It's not just hedge mages. This guy's pretty cool. His name's Gun Shop. He's called that because he's got this bag that he could pull any gun out of, basically. And here's an example of your danger rating. Is the higher your danger rating, the bigger gun he's going to pull out of that bag. So, yeah, if you have danger 5, this guy's super dangerous. He can pull out a bazooka and just blow you all up. That's definitely an awakened mage if he's going to be doing stuff like that. I don't know why he's spending all his time hunting hunters, but that's what the story is there. There's ghosts. There's fair folk, which is like fairies and stranger things. That's not the show. That's just, like really weird, like cryptids, that kind of thing. And then there's the rival organizations. I think that they're putting way too much weight on these orgs. I like them. I think they're really cool. But they're like... There's 2 main antagonists. There's the monsters, which I just showed you. And then there's this huge library of organization types. Not organization types. I just read that off the screen. Different orgs that are divided into types. Then the types, according to Justin Killey on Twitter, parallel the hunter creeds. So hopefully I get this all right. I believe that academic organizations parallel inquisitives. Corporate organizations parallel the entrepreneurials. That's probably why they use that word, is because to parallel the corporate ones. But I think, innovators, inventors, whatever, also would work. Anyone dealing with devices. Government, I want to say that the parallel to government would be the marshal, because governments have a monopoly on violence. Religious, why am I blanking on the term? Is it faithful? I believe. Faithful is paralleling them. Now, vigilantes. There's no examples of vigilante organizations here, I'm wondering if that's because it says that they go too far. I'm wondering if that means they're like internalized in these other organizations. Reading through this, it made me believe that like it would give me examples of vigilante organizations, but maybe they're smaller. But that kind of goes against the idea of the orgs. Vigilantes parallel to, I believe, the underground. So maybe they're not there because they don't make a big deal of who they are. Special Affairs Division. This is the first example of an org. And as I was saying earlier, this is a Special Affairs Division. SAD makes a huge appearance in Second Inquisition, the vampire book. SAD is also in Swansong, Vampire the Masquerade Swansong. SAD and the Society of Leopold were the main hunters in that video game. As you see, they're a government org. It doesn't do much for stats here, but there are sample characters after this section. There's a lot of flavor text about them. I really enjoy them and how they're associated with other organizations such as the Information Awareness, which is also a government org, and the Society of Leopold, which I mentioned for Swansong, which is a classic one. Society of Leopold, the symbol here, you'll see this letterhead. Society of Leopold is from prior editions of Vampire as well. They're a vampire hunter organization that sometimes looks at other things, but mostly vampires. The Arcanum, also a legacy hunter organization. They're an academic org. They try not to directly hunt them, just learn of them, learn their secrets, step back. They find it's easier to survive when you're not in a war. The Bows of Rio de Janeiro. They're getting very global with this iteration of the game. So that's in Brazil. Very similar to SAD in many ways. Then you get this Manila Department of Justice. Some of them are very, I find very niche. They don't seem like global conspiracies to me. It's like the Manila Department of Justice that's like just a couple prisons or something. This one's a little weird. I don't get quite what this is. Monster X, there seem to be mercenaries, but it's like how do you run a corporation based on monster hunting if monsters, is this like True Blood where they're out of the coffin? How do you get clients if you don't? There's also another one, I think it's called the Revenge or something like that at the end. How do you get clients if monsters are secret or most people don't know about monsters? It doesn't quite work unless you're kind of the True Blood thing where they're out of the coffin. Nails for Christ. This reminds me a lot of some of the organizations in Hunter the Vigil, just another religious organization. This one's in the shortened to KKK. Ooh, yikes. I'll have to read through these thoroughly. This one's in the Philippines, though. Ooh, shortened to KKK. Yikes. Order of the Rose. This one I found particularly interesting. Now, they're another religious organization, but they are trying to make their own community. They're trying to do the Stepford Wives thing, but for some reason they think that to do that they have to bring themselves. This reminds me a lot of the Pride drive, even though allegedly orgs don't have drives. They just their drive is to be part of the org and just follow the org. It almost seems like this org does have a drive to say that humans are better than the supernatural, and they want to do their own perfect world, which is why they're fighting, which I find it's kind of interesting. In a way, it's a little weird, but it's also really interesting. Speaking of legacy groups, though, Orpheus Group. This one's quite the legacy group. It had its own game line. There were 6 or 7 books dedicated to Orpheus. They had their own core book. It was basically a spin-off of Wraith. In fact, Orpheus is my favorite iteration of any Ghost version of these games, whether it was, Chronicles of Darkness Geists, the traditional Wraith the Oblivion. Orpheus, hands down, best Ghost game in my opinion. I suggest checking it out. But it was based around this one corporate organization, and I think it actually fits. It fits for Hunter. I like it a lot. I would love to run a game based around Orpheus. If you're interested in playing that, drop a comment down there. Oh, occupational hazards. It says that in Orpheus, right? That's the name of my company. It says it right in my corner here. Um, I just thought that was funny because I'm such a big Orpheus fan, and they use that as a subtitle there. Revenge. This is the other corporate organization that sort of like gets revenge for people. I don't know how you find them if in a worlds where I guess word of mouth for people who are like in the hunter verse. The people who are just in the know. And here's the list of antagonists. Now that's it. Overall, I think this is a good game that I'd love to play. Especially with stuff like this. Nazis are not invited. If you are a neo-Nazi or alt-righter, do not play this game. In fact, I think that's where they got with the orgs, where the hunters are not the orgs specifically. Like, if you're going to be a fascist organization, that's not what this game's about. I also like that there's warnings about like consent and like warning that there could be sexual violence in this game. You got to talk about it if you want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. If you're going to represent anything like that, if it crosses a line, lines and veils, make sure you discuss that and everyone is on the same page so you know what kind of game you want. There's lots of tools in the back of this book for how to run any game. A lot of these advices and rules are good for the safety for any type of game. It doesn't have to be Hunter or even World of Darkness. Shows the character sheet back there. I'm going to jump to, all over the place apparently. You got this Orpheus group letterhead, which I really appreciate. As I said, I love Orpheus. You also have this Legacy Society of Leopold letterhead, which is great for roleplay. You can print these out and make some cool stuff. And the character sheet. Character sheet's pretty self-explanatory. You just do the stuff as in the character creator section. It's got a toggle for despair here. You either are or not in despair. Edges and perks. I think this is a little weird that it's a grid, especially since there's every single edge has 4 perks, and there are, I don't know, about a dozen edges. So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So okay, so there maybe you can fit like every edge here, and maybe put the perks this way. I don't know how this is supposed to be used. But then there's only 2 spots for your perks, and there could be 4. You see, I would have had it like a 5 by, I don't know, 5 maybe, I don't know. I saw the day shift people make their character sheets, and they all did a different thing here. This is just there's got to be a better way to write this out. This just seems like a huge waste of space. This seems like a big waste of space too, because your creed field is only one thing. So why do you need all this space to write it out? And you should just be able to select it. Like, your creed is your creed field, so just whatever you write up here should be your creed field. But lots of people customize and make their own character sheets. There's nothing wrong with this character sheet. There's nothing on this character sheet prevents you from playing. I just think there's a lot of waste of space here. I didn't discuss Chronicle Tenets. So Chronicle Tenets, they're just basically a narrative device in this game. It doesn't, since there's no humanity track or anything like that, you just have to agree to why you're a cell. There's a section for that. There's some pre-made like 3 tenet things. But yeah, that's it. And on a final note, how would I rate this game? I think this game, there's a lot of potential here. I think I definitely want to play it. I might want to play it often. As I said, I'm very disappointed that the edges aren't powerful at all. I can house rule some of my own, or just focus on a low power game, which, there's nothing wrong with a low power game. Sometimes it's about the role playing. It's just focusing on the monsters, less on what my character's cool powers are. I love the narrative. I love the flavor text in this book. I love how streamlined it is. I don't think I like this game as much as the work they've done to Vampire so far. However, this is just a core book. There's no supplements yet. Maybe it'll change my mind when some supplements come out. When some extra material, maybe they'll power up those edges. Maybe they'll come out with new creeds, or maybe have an explanation of where the imbued went, or come out with an entire like monster manual supplement that's just gonna blow me away. Um, I like the way this book's formatted, much better than Vampire Book. Um, so yeah, I'd say this is a recommend to buy if you're into World of Darkness. It might actually be a good book to a good game to introduce new players to, since it's pretty simple to understand being a human fighting monsters. I mean, that's what most role playing games end up doing anyway. You do that in Dungeons and Dragons. You do that in many other games. Um, and then this would be a good introduction because your characters aren't supposed to know about anything. It specifically says that in the book. In fact, that's something I forgot to mention was that there's no lore sheets. Um, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe I've seen Justin Achille. Uh, the what's his title? Um, well, he's in here several times. Justin Achille, the creative lead for World of Darkness. I believe I've seen him on record saying he doesn't quite like lore sheets. If I'm wrong about that, Justin, I'm sorry. Um, I did notice that there's no lore sheets in this. It says because hunters are just new to the world, they don't have a lot of influence on the supernatural yet. Um, yeah, I believe that we're gonna see a pullback on lore sheets. There's lore sheets are just in Vampire. They're just like extra backgrounds that add flavor to the lore. And they could keep on adding new ones. Normally they're 1 to 5, and sometimes they'll do with a specific person or a specific event or a specific thing that your character is an expert in, or something like that, or if they are part of a bloodline, that kind of thing. Um, I can see how they're clunky. I can see how they can be game breaking because it's hard to balance whatever's in every single book if there's a bunch of lore sheets all over the place. They are inconsistent. I do like their flavor, um, but they're not in this game. Um, so overall, I think this is a great introduction game for new players, and I would actually recommend playing it even if you're a veteran, because then you get that fresh new perspective of not knowing everything about, like, say, in Werewolf there's a lot of deep lore with like the worm, the wild, the weaver. In this you're just like, I don't know what's going on. I think I just saw that guy turn into a wolf. I need to protect my family. And that can lead to a lot deeper, richer role play than getting lost in lore. And this is designed to have a light lore, and it's designed for you to get out of despair and fight for hope. So that's my review, and those are my opinions. So, hunters, good luck going after your quarry, and fight the night. Thank you, and goodbye.